When my fiancé called off our wedding 2 weeks before the date, he said, "You're still too fat to fit my vision of a bride." I stood in our living room holding the final payment receipt for the venue, while my fiancé, Aaron, sat on the couch scrolling through Instagram like he hadn't just destroyed our wedding plans. I'd lost 70 pounds in the past year because he'd said it would make our photos better, but apparently it wasn't enough. The vision I've always had of my wedding day. You know this. He showed me his phone screen full of wedding photos from his fitness influencer friends. "Look at these brides. This is the standard." He zoomed in on a woman who looked like she hadn't eaten in months. "You're still probably a size 8. These women are 2s at most." I was actually a size 6 now, down from a 16, but he didn't care about my health or how hard I'd worked. "Aaron, we've sent the invitations. People have booked flights." He shrugged and kept scrolling. "So we'll postpone. Tell them you need more time to get wedding ready." He stood up and grabbed my arm. "Feel this. Still soft. Brides should have defined muscles." He was pinching my arm like I was livestock. "I work out 5 days a week, Aaron." He laughed. "Yeah, but you're not doing it right. You still have hips, and your face is too round." He pulled up more photos. "See these cheekbones? That's what I need standing next to me." His friend Jake walked in from the kitchen, eating my meal prep. "Bro, just get her a trainer who actually knows what they're doing." Jake, who lived on our couch rent-free because Aaron said he needed support during his fitness journey. "My trainer is excellent. I've lost 70 pounds. Jake looked me up and down. 70 pounds from what, though? "You must have been huge." He said huge like it was disgusting. Aaron nodded. "She was. I almost didn't propose, but she promised she'd lose weight. He'd proposed to me at my heaviest and said he loved me no matter what." "You said my weight didn't matter." Aaron laughed. "I was investing in potential, like buying a fixer-upper house." He compared me to property. "But the renovation isn't complete yet." That's when my sister Amy arrived to pick up the bridesmaid dresses. "What's going on?" "You look upset," Aaron answered before I could. "We're postponing the wedding until she loses another 30 pounds minimum." Amy's jaw dropped. "She's already lost so much weight she had to buy all new clothes." Aaron walked over to Amy. "See, your sister is naturally thin. Good genetics. You got the lucky genes." He said this to my sister in front of me. "If only parents had 2 like you." Amy looked disgusted. "My sister is beautiful at any size." Aaron pulled out his laptop. "Beautiful doesn't photograph well. I need stunning." He opened a folder labeled Wedding Body Goals with hundreds of photos of extremely thin women. "I've been collecting these for inspiration. She needs to look like this." He'd been collecting photos of other women for our wedding. Jake added his opinion nobody asked for. "The wedding industry is brutal, man. Fat brides get mocked online." Aaron nodded enthusiastic. "Exactly. I have a reputation. I'm a fitness coach. I can't have a fat wife." He owned a small gym with 12 clients total. "My brand depends on having the right image." Amy grabbed my hand. "Your brand? She's a human being, not a marketing tool." Aaron got defensive. "Every successful man knows his wife is part of his image. Look at any CEO or athlete." He pulled up more Instagram accounts. "Their wives are all thin and perfect. That's not coincidence." Jake was recording himself flexing in our mirror. "Aaron's right. Thick wives hold men back professionally." He'd never had a job in his life. "People judge you by your partner's appearance." That's when my mom walked in with the cake samples we were supposed to taste. "Why does everyone look so serious?" Aaron grabbed the cake boxes and threw them in the trash. "She's not allowed cake until she reaches goal weight." My mom pulled them back out. "These cost $200, Aaron." He threw them back in. $200 wasted on sugar she doesn't need. He looked at me. "This is why you're still fat." Enablers. My mom, who'd supported me through my entire weight loss journey, was being called an enabler. "Aaron, she's lost 70 pounds. She runs half marathons now." Aaron scoffed. "Slow half marathons. Real athletes finish in under 90 minutes. I'd finished my last race in 2 hours and been proud of it." "You finished your first marathon in 4 hours, Aaron." He got angry. "That was different. I was building mass back then. Now I'm cut." He lifted his shirt to show abs. "This is what dedication looks like." Jake immediately lifted his shirt too. "Bro, we should do a fitness competition together." They started posing while my mom and sister stared in disbelief. Aaron turned back to me. "I'll make you a deal. Lose 30 pounds in 2 months and we can get married in the fall." That was physically dangerous and impossible. Or just stay fat and single. Your choice. Amy exploded. She moved so fast I didn't see her grab Aaron's shirt until she had him by the collar and was pulling him up from the couch. Her face was red and her hands were shaking, but her voice came out steady and cold. "You are a pathetic excuse for a man who doesn't deserve my sister." Aaron tried to laugh like it was a joke, but the sound came out wrong and Amy didn't let go. She twisted the fabric tighter in her fist and got closer to his face. "You think you can talk about her like she's property you're fixing up? Like she's some renovation project?" Mom moved to stand beside Amy and positioned herself directly in front of the door with her arms crossed. Aaron looked between them and finally seemed to realize this wasn't going the way he expected. He tried to pull away from Amy, but she held on and kept talking. "She lost 70 pounds. She runs half marathons. She works out 5 days a week. And you still think she's not good enough?" Jake stood up from where he'd been flexing in the mirror and started toward them, but Mom held up one hand. "Don't even think about it, Jake. You have no say in this." Aaron managed to twist free from Amy's grip and smooth down his shirt like nothing had happened. "This is between me and her. You all need to calm down." But his voice had that edge it got when he was losing control of a situation. Amy stepped back and looked at me, and I saw something in her face that made everything suddenly clear. She was waiting for me to speak. They were all waiting. Aaron was still standing there expecting me to smooth things over like I always did when he pushed too far. I'd spent a year shrinking myself literally and in every other way to fit into his vision of what I should be. The venue receipt was still in my hand, and I looked down at it and thought about all the money we'd spent, and all the people who'd made plans, and all the dreams I'd had about marrying someone who loved me. Then I looked at Aaron and realized he'd never loved me at all. He'd loved the idea of what he could turn me into. Get out. My voice came out quieter than I wanted, but everyone heard it. Aaron's eyebrows went up. What? I said it louder this time. Get out of the apartment. I'm done with your impossible standards and your cruel comparisons and your obsession with how I look in photos. He stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. You're being ridiculous. This is our apartment. I took a step toward him and he actually backed up a little. I don't care if your name is on the lease. I want you out. I'm done trying to shrink myself to fit your vision. I'm done working out until I'm exhausted and eating your approved meals and listening to you criticize every part of my body. His face changed then, and I saw the exact moment he realized I was serious. He looked genuinely shocked, like he'd expected me to just accept his ultimatum and keep trying to lose more weight and be the bride he wanted. You're going to throw away 3 years over this? Because I want you to be your best self? I laughed and it sounded bitter even to me. My best self? You mean your ideal accessory? Someone who photographs well for your brand? Jake jumped in from across the room. She's being dramatic, Aaron. She'll calm down in a few hours. He walked over and put his hand on Aaron's shoulder. Just give her some space to think about what she's giving up. Mom pulled out her phone and held it up. I'm recording this, Aaron. If you don't leave voluntarily, I'm calling the police for harassment. Aaron's face went red. Harassment? I live here. This is my home. Mom kept the phone pointed at him. You just told my daughter she's too fat to marry. You called me an enabler for bringing cake samples. You've been emotionally abusing her for months, and we all just watched you compare her to a house renovation. Her voice got louder. So yes, I'm calling it harassment, and if you don't leave right now, I'm dialing 911. Aaron looked around the room like he was trying to figure out how this had all gone so wrong so fast. He looked at me one more time, and I could see him calculating whether he could talk his way back to control. The lease is in both our names. You can't make me leave. Jake nodded. Yeah, man, you have rights. She's the one who should leave if she's got a problem. Amy moved toward the door but kept her eyes on Aaron. My sister isn't going anywhere. You are. Aaron crossed his arms. I'm not going anywhere. This is my apartment too, and I have clients coming tomorrow morning. Mom's finger moved toward her phone screen. Okay, I'm calling the police then. We'll let them sort out who should leave when I show them the recording of you grabbing her arm and pinching it like livestock. That did it. Aaron's face changed and he grabbed his gym bag from beside the couch. He shoved his laptop in first, then started throwing in protein powder containers and his workout clothes. Jake scrambled to get his stuff too and kept muttering about how dramatic women were. Aaron zipped the bag and slung it over his shoulder. He walked to the door and Mom had to step aside to let him through. But he stopped in the doorway and looked back at me. You're going to regret this. You're throwing away our relationship over your pride. You know that, right? I didn't say anything. Amy reached past him and grabbed the deadbolt. Goodbye, Aaron. He stood there for another few seconds like he was waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, he shook his head and walked out. Jake followed him and Amy slammed the door shut and turned the deadbolt so hard I heard it click into place. The apartment went quiet. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking and the sound of my own breathing. Then my legs just gave out and I collapsed onto the couch. My whole body was shaking and I couldn't tell if it was from adrenaline or relief or both. Amy sat down next to me and put her arm around my shoulders. Mom sat on my other side and took my hand. Nobody said anything for a long time. I just sat there shaking and trying to process what had just happened. I'd ended my engagement. I'd kicked Aaron out. The wedding was canceled. Everything I'd been planning for months was gone. But underneath the shock and the fear, there was something else. Something that felt almost like freedom. I woke up the next morning in my old bedroom at Mom's house. The walls were still painted the pale blue I'd picked out in high school, and my swimming trophies were still on the shelf. Amy had insisted we leave the apartment last night after Aaron left. She'd thrown clothes and toiletries into a bag while I sat on the couch still shaking, and Mom called to let her know we were coming. I'd slept in my childhood bed and dreamed about running, but in the dream my legs felt light instead of heavy. My phone was on the nightstand, and when I picked it up, the screen showed 47 text messages from Aaron. I scrolled through them without opening any. The first ones were angry, calling me selfish and dramatic and saying I'd embarrassed him in front of Jake. Then they shifted to manipulation, reminding me of good times we'd had and saying he knew I didn't mean what I said. Then back to anger, saying I'd wasted his time and money and he deserved better than someone who gave up so easily. Then apologies, saying he'd been stressed about the gym's finances and took it out on me. Then more manipulation, saying he'd always believed in my potential and just wanted to help me be my best. They all followed the same pattern. Blame me, then try to win me back. Then blame me again. I put the phone face down and got out of bed. Mom was making coffee in the kitchen when I came downstairs. She poured me a cup without asking, and I sat at the table where I'd eaten breakfast every morning before school. How are you feeling? I wrapped my hands around the mug. I don't know. Like everything just changed, but also like nothing has changed yet. She nodded. That's normal. You made a big decision last night. I looked at my phone sitting on the table. He sent 47 texts. Mom's jaw tightened. Don't respond to any of them. He's trying to get you back under his control. I knew she was right, but part of me still wanted to read through them all and see if there was one real apology in there somewhere. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Kylie's number instead. She answered on the second ring even though it was early where she lived. I told her everything and she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a second. I'm booking a flight. I'll be there tonight. I started to tell her she didn't need to do that, but she cut me off. I'm coming. You need someone there, and I should have said something months ago. I felt my throat get tight. Said something about what? She sighed. I never liked Aaron. I thought he was controlling. But you seemed happy, so I didn't want to overstep. I thought about all the times I'd canceled plans with Kylie because Aaron had scheduled an extra workout or said her lifestyle was bad influence. I wasn't happy. I was just trying. So hard to be what he wanted that I convinced myself I was happy. Kylie's voice got firm. Well, you're done with that now. I'll text you my flight info. We're going to get through this. I hung up with Kylie and went back downstairs where Mom and Amy were already making lists. Amy had a notebook open with columns labeled clothes, books, kitchen stuff, and other. Mom was on her laptop searching for rental trucks available that afternoon. We're getting you out of there today. Amy tapped her pen against the paper. Aaron works until 6 on Wednesdays, so we have a solid window. I sat down at the table and added bathroom items and running gear to Amy's list. My hands shook a little writing it all down. This was really happening. I was leaving the apartment I'd shared with Aaron for 2 years, and all the plans we'd made together. Mom found a truck available for pickup in an hour. I'll get it. You two start making a game plan for how to pack efficiently. She grabbed her keys and headed out before I could offer to help pay for it. Amy drew a rough floor plan of the apartment and started marking what belonged to me versus what Aaron had brought into the relationship. Most of the furniture was his, but all the kitchen stuff was mine because I was the only one who actually cooked. The TV and couch were his. The bed was technically ours, but I didn't want it anymore. Too many nights lying there feeling not good enough. Leave the bed. Amy crossed it off her diagram. You can get a new one and it'll be yours. We drove to the apartment in Amy's car, and I used my key for what I knew would be the last time. The place felt different now. Smaller somehow. Less like home and more like a place I'd been trapped. Amy went straight to the bedroom and started pulling my clothes out of the closet. I grabbed boxes from the storage closet and began in the bathroom. My shampoo and face wash and the running magazine I kept by the toilet. Aaron's protein powders took up 3 shelves, but I carefully worked around them, taking only what was mine. In the bedroom, I found the scale hidden under Aaron's side of the bed, and the extra weights he'd attached to my dumbbells sitting in his gym bag. Amy saw me holding them and her face went red. He was sabotaging you. I put the weights back in his bag and threw the scale in the box hard enough that something inside it cracked. Good. I never wanted to see another scale as long as I lived. We worked fast and didn't talk much. Amy wrapped my dishes in newspaper while I packed books. Mom arrived with the truck and backed it up to the apartment entrance. The 3 of us formed an assembly line carrying boxes down 2 flights of stairs. My arms burned, but it felt good. Physical work that had nothing to do with Aaron's approval. We'd loaded about half my stuff when Jake's car pulled into the parking lot. He got out holding takeout bags and stopped when he saw the truck. What's going on? Amy kept carrying boxes past him without answering. I came down the stairs with a lamp and Jake stepped in front of me. You can't just take stuff. Some of this is shared property. Mom appeared behind me and took the lamp from my hands. She's taking her belongings. You have no legal standing here, Jake. He puffed up, trying to look bigger. I live here too. I have a say in what leaves. Mom laughed. You pay no rent. Your name isn't on the lease. You're essentially a squatter Aaron allows to stay. You have exactly 0 rights to prevent anything. Jake's face turned red, but he moved aside. We kept loading boxes, and he followed us back and forth, making comments about how I was being dramatic, and Aaron deserved better. Amy finally spun around. Jake, shut up or leave. Those are your options. He went inside, and I heard him on the phone, probably calling Aaron. We worked faster. I grabbed my running medals from the drawer where I'd hidden them after Aaron called them participation trophies. 5 half marathons and 3 10Ks. Each one represented early mornings and sore muscles, and the feeling of crossing a finish line. Aaron had never come to watch me race, said it wasn't worth his time to see me finish in the middle of the pack. I held the medals for a minute, feeling their weight. I'd run 13.1 miles, multiple times. That was real. That mattered. Amy touched my shoulder. Those are going on display in your new place. I packed them carefully in a box labeled important, and carried it to the truck myself. The kitchen took longest because I had to wrap everything in newspaper. My grandmother's mixing bowls that Aaron said were outdated. The cast iron skillet I'd seasoned perfectly. All the meal prep containers I'd bought thinking they'd help me lose weight faster. I left Aaron's protein shake bottles and his special blender that cost $300. In the living room, I took the photos of my family and left the ones of us together. Let him keep those memories. I didn't want them anymore. My bookshelf was mine, so we dismantled it and loaded the pieces. Aaron's fitness magazine stayed on his shelf. We finished loading everything in under 2 hours. The apartment looked bare in spots now. Gaps on shelves where my books had been. Empty space in the closet. The kitchen missing half its contents. I wrote a note on the back of a grocery receipt telling Aaron to have the landlord contact me about the lease. I left my key next to it. Amy grabbed the pen and added her own note at the bottom. P.S. Jake, get a job. We drove the truck to Mom's house with Amy following in her car. Unloading went faster because we just stacked boxes in the garage. I'd sort through everything later. Right now, I just needed it out of that apartment. Away from Aaron. We'd just brought in the last box when Kylie's car pulled up. She got out and ran straight to me, wrapping her arms around me so tight I could barely breathe. That's when I finally cried. Not sad crying exactly. More like release. Like something that had been wound too tight inside me finally loosened. Kylie held on and didn't say anything for a minute. Then she pulled back and looked at me. I'm proud of you. Walking away from him took guts. I wiped my face. I should have done it sooner. She shook her head. You did it when you were ready. That's what matters. And Aaron showed you exactly who he is when he thought he had complete control. We went inside and Mom made coffee. I I sat at the kitchen table in my childhood home surrounded by the 3 women who actually cared about me and felt lighter than I had in months. My phone rang around 4. The wedding planner. I'd completely forgotten about her. I answered and she asked about final headcount confirmations for the reception. The wedding is canceled. Silence on the other end. Then her voice got softer. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I told her I was fine and asked about the cancellation policy. She explained I'd lose the deposits but wouldn't owe the final payment since I was canceling more than a week out. The venue deposit was gone. The caterer deposit was gone. The photographer deposit was gone. Over $5,000 just disappeared. But I didn't have to pay the remaining $15,000. Thank you for being understanding. She wished me well and we hung up, and I made a list of everyone who needed to know the wedding was off. Aaron's family, my extended family, our friends, people who'd bought plane tickets and booked hotels. I started calling. My aunt answered first and I told her the wedding wasn't happening. She asked why and I said Aaron and I had different values. She was sweet about it. Said she was sorry, but she supported whatever I needed to do. Aaron's uncle was next. He barely reacted. Said okay, and hung up. My cousin wanted details, but I kept it vague. Just said we'd grown apart. Most people were kind. A few asked if I was sure. One friend said maybe we just needed space and would work it out. I didn't bother explaining that there was nothing to work out. By the time I finished calling everyone on my list, it was almost 7. My voice was hoarse and I was exhausted. Then my phone buzzed with a voicemail. Aaron's aunt. The one who'd always loved him. I played it on speaker. Her voice was sharp. I heard you canceled the wedding. You're making a huge mistake. Aaron is a catch and you'll never find someone better. He was trying to help you be your best self and you threw it away. You're going to regret this. Amy grabbed my phone and deleted the message. Don't listen to her. She's delusional. Kylie sat down next to me with her laptop. We need to post something before people start asking questions on social media. We drafted a simple statement together. Just said that Aaron and I had decided to go our separate ways and we appreciated everyone's understanding during this private time. I posted it on my accounts and put my phone face down. Within 30 minutes, it buzzed with notifications. I flipped it over and saw Aaron had posted his own version. Sometimes people aren't willing to put in the work to be their best selves. I wanted a partner committed to health and wellness, but she chose to give up on our shared goals. Wishing her well on her journey. Amy read it over my shoulder and immediately started screenshotting. She reported the post for harassment and blocked Aaron on every platform I had. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even LinkedIn. You don't need to read his version of events. His opinion stopped mattering the moment he called you too fat to marry. Kylie's sister Freya showed up after dinner. She was a therapist and Kylie had asked her to stop by. We sat in the living room and Freya asked me to walk her through my relationship with Aaron from the beginning. I told her about how sweet he'd been at first. How he'd said my weight didn't matter and he loved me for who I was. How that slowly changed. How he started suggesting healthier meals and extra workouts. How the suggestions became expectations. How the expectations became demands. Freya listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a second. What you're describing is a pattern of control that escalated over time. The weight loss demand wasn't the first controlling behavior. It was just the most obvious one you couldn't ignore anymore. I thought about that. About all the small things I'd explained away. How Aaron picked my gym clothes because he said I didn't know what looked good. How he scheduled my workouts and got mad if I missed one. How he controlled what food came into the apartment. How he criticized my friends and made me feel guilty for spending time with them. He isolated me. Freya nodded. Classic pattern. Controllers separate their partners from support systems so they're easier to manipulate. Did he schedule workouts during times you'd normally see friends? I remembered canceling plans with Kylie because Aaron said we needed to do a long run together. Missing my cousin's birthday party because Aaron wanted me to meal prep with him. Skipping girls' nights because Aaron said late nights would mess up my training schedule. Kylie confirmed it. You canceled on me so many times. I thought you were just busy. But now I see he was keeping you away from people who might tell you his behavior wasn't okay. I thought about all the times I'd canceled plans with friends because Aaron said I needed to focus on training. The birthday parties I'd missed. The girls' weekends I'd skipped. Freya nodded and took notes on her phone. Not in a clinical way, but like she was documenting patterns she wanted me to see clearly later. Amy sat next to me on the couch and squeezed my hand. She didn't say anything, but her presence felt solid and real in a way nothing had felt solid in months. Mom came back from the kitchen with tea and sat in the armchair across from us. She opened a photo album I hadn't seen in years and set it on the coffee table. The cover was worn and the pages were that old plastic kind that stuck to the photos. Mom flipped through slowly and stopped on a picture of me at my high school graduation. I was probably a size 12 then, wearing a red dress I'd loved, smiling huge because I'd just gotten accepted to my dream college. The girl in that photo looked confident and happy. Mom turned more pages. Me at college orientation. Me at my first job. Me at Amy's college graduation. Me at family holidays. Different sizes and different photos, but always smiling, always looking comfortable in my own skin. I barely recognized that version of myself. When had I stopped smiling like that? When had I started analyzing every photo for bad angles and unflattering lighting? Mom pointed to one picture from a camping trip 3 years ago before I'd met Aaron. I was probably at my heaviest there, wearing hiking clothes and holding a fish I'd caught, grinning like I'd won the lottery. The woman in that photo wasn't worried about whether her face looked too round or her arms looked too soft. She was just happy. Freya leaned forward and looked at the photos. She asked when I'd met Aaron, and I told her it was about 2 years ago. She asked me to look at the photos from before that time and compare them to how I felt now. The difference was obvious. Before Aaron, I'd existed in my body without constantly monitoring and critiquing it. After Aaron, every moment became about whether I was good enough, thin enough, toned enough. My phone buzzed with an email notification, and I checked it out of habit. The landlord had sent a message with the subject line, lease discussion. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Aaron had contacted him asking that I continue paying my half of the rent through the lease end date in 4 months even though I'd moved out. The email said Aaron felt it was fair since we'd both signed the lease, and he shouldn't have to cover my portion just because I'd chosen to leave. Mom read over my shoulder and immediately pulled out her phone. She called someone and stepped into the kitchen. I heard her say something about needing legal advice for her daughter. Freya asked to see the email and read it carefully. She said Aaron was trying to maintain financial control even after I'd left, using the lease as leverage to keep me connected to him. Amy got mad and started typing an angry response, but Freya stopped her. She said we needed to handle this through proper channels, not emotional reactions. Mom came back and said her friend Ellen was a lawyer who specialized in tenant rights and domestic situations. Ellen could see me tomorrow morning to discuss options. She said since Aaron had created a hostile living environment that forced me to leave, I might have grounds to break the lease without penalty. That night, I barely slept thinking about going back to work the next day. I'd taken 2 days off using personal time and told my boss I had a family emergency. Now I had to face everyone knowing the wedding was canceled and probably fielding questions about what happened. I got to the office early hoping to avoid people, but Ramona was already at her desk. She looked up when I walked past and immediately stood up. She followed me to my cubicle and asked if I was okay. I told her the wedding was off and waited for the awkward questions or false sympathy. Instead, Ramona said she thought Aaron was controlling based on the few times she'd met him at company events. She said he'd made comments about my food choices at the holiday party, and she'd found it weird. She said she'd almost said something to me but didn't want to overstep. I felt relieved that someone else had noticed Aaron's behavior wasn't normal. Ramona asked if I wanted to grab lunch later and I said yes. Around noon, we went to the sandwich place down the street and Ramona told me about her weekly running group. She said they met every Thursday evening and ran different routes around the city. The group had about 8 regular members, all different paces and body types, and they were supportive of each other. She said I should come sometime. I hesitated because Aaron had always said group runs were for people who weren't serious about performance, that real runners trained alone or with equally dedicated partners. Ramona laughed and said her group ran because they enjoyed it, not because they were training for the Olympics. She said one woman was 60 and training for her first 5K. Another woman just liked the social aspect and walked part of the route. Nobody tracked pace or compared times. They just moved together and talked and had fun. The concept felt foreign after a year of Aaron timing every run and criticizing my splits. That evening, I met Ramona at the park where her group gathered. 8 women were stretching and chatting, ranging in age from maybe 30 to 60, all different body types. Ramona introduced me and everyone welcomed me without asking why I was there or what my pace was. We started running and I fell into step with a woman named Claire who was training for her first 5K at 60 years old. She told me about her grandkids and her garden and asked about my job. We ran for 40 minutes without once discussing calories or body fat percentage or whether our form was optimal. Another woman caught up to us and joined the conversation about weekend plans. Nobody mentioned how fast or slow we were going. After the run, several women invited me for coffee at a place nearby. We sat outside and talked about everything except running. 2 women mentioned they'd left controlling relationships in the past year. They didn't push me to share my story but made it clear they understood if I needed to talk. One woman said leaving her ex-husband was the hardest thing she'd ever done, but also the best decision. The other woman said it took her months to stop hearing her ex-boyfriend's critical voice in her head every time she looked in the mirror. I felt less alone than I had in months. When I got back to Mom's house that night, my phone had 3 texts from Aaron. The first one apologized for overreacting about the wedding. The second one said he'd been stressed about the gym's finances and took it out on me unfairly. The third one suggested couples counseling and promised he'd be less focused on appearance if I gave him another chance. I showed the text to Freya the next day when she stopped by. She read them and asked if I really believed Aaron would change, or if I thought he was just scared of losing control. She said this was a predictable pattern in abusive relationships. Love bombing after consequences. She called it the cycle of abuse. Blow up, apologize, promise change, repeat. She asked if Aaron had done this before, and I realized he had. Every time I'd pushed back against his rules or criticism, he'd apologize and be sweet for a while before the control started creeping back in. I typed out a final text to Aaron saying I wasn't interested in reconciliation, and he should only contact me through lawyers about the lease. I sent it and immediately blocked his number. Within 2 minutes, my phone rang from Jake's number. I declined the call and blocked that number too. The fact that Aaron had immediately tried to reach me from another phone proved Freya's point about him not actually changing. The gym where I'd been training with Aaron's recommended trainer called the next morning to confirm my next appointment. I explained I was looking for a new gym and wouldn't be returning. The manager asked if there was a problem with the facilities and I said no, just a personal situation. She paused and then said they'd had other complaints about Aaron's approach being too extreme and body-focused. She said several women had mentioned feeling uncomfortable with his training methods and the way he talked about their bodies. She thanked me for my honesty and said they were reviewing their relationship with Aaron's gym. Ramona sent me the contact information for her trainer the next day, and I called to schedule a consultation. Victor answered on the second ring and asked when I wanted to come in without any pressure about committing to training. I drove to his gym that afternoon and found it completely different from Aaron's place. The equipment looked well used instead of brand new for show. Several people of different ages and body types were working out and nobody was taking mirror selfies. Victor met me at the front desk and shook my hand. He looked maybe 40 with gray in his hair and smiled like he was genuinely happy to meet me. We sat in his office and he asked what brought me in. I explained I was looking for a new trainer after leaving my previous gym. He nodded and asked what my goals were. I hesitated because Aaron always made this conversation about my weight and appearance. Victor waited patiently, and then said he focused on helping people get stronger and healthier, regardless of what they looked like. I told him about running half marathons and wanting to keep improving. He asked about my training history, and I explained the past year of working out 5 days a week. He listened without interrupting or judging. When I finished, he said my half marathon time was solid for someone who started running just a year ago. Nobody had ever called my running solid before. Aaron dismissed my times as slow and said real athletes finished faster. Victor asked if I'd had any injuries and seemed genuinely concerned about keeping me healthy. He explained his training philosophy focused on building strength and preventing injury rather than burning maximum calories. The difference from Aaron's approach was so stark I almost cried. We scheduled 3 sessions per week starting the following Monday. The first training session with Victor felt completely different from anything I'd experienced with Aaron's methods. Victor started by watching me do basic movements and correcting my form to prevent injury. He explained why each exercise mattered for running performance and overall strength. When I struggled with a particular movement, he adjusted it instead of pushing me harder. Aaron used to yell encouragement that felt more like criticism. Victor just calmly explained what to focus on and praised specific improvements. By the end of the session, I felt tired but good instead of exhausted and ashamed. Victor gave me a training plan for the week that included rest days. Aaron never programmed rest days because he said they were for weak people. I left the gym feeling excited about exercise for the first time in months. On Wednesday evening, I was helping Mom make dinner when the doorbell rang. Mom went to answer it and I heard Aaron's voice from the kitchen. My stomach dropped. Mom's tone was firm and cold. I walked to the front door and saw Aaron standing on the porch holding a large bouquet of flowers. He tried to look past Mom to me. Mom blocked his view and told him he wasn't welcome at her house. Aaron said he just wanted to talk and apologize properly. Mom said showing up uninvited was harassment and she would call the police if he didn't leave immediately. Aaron looked genuinely surprised that she was serious. He set the flowers on the porch railing and pulled an envelope from his jacket. Mom told him to take everything and leave. Aaron said he'd written a letter explaining everything and wanted me to read it. Mom repeated that he needed to leave now or she was calling the police. She pulled her phone from her pocket and started dialing. Aaron held up his hands and backed away from the door. He walked to his car but stopped at the mailbox and put the envelope inside before driving away. Mom closed the door and locked it. She asked if I was okay, and I nodded even though my hands were shaking. Mom said she was proud of me for not engaging with him. We went back to making dinner, but I couldn't stop thinking about the letter in the mailbox. After Mom went to bed that night, I couldn't resist anymore. I walked outside and grabbed the envelope from the mailbox. It was thick and had my name written in Aaron's careful handwriting. I sat on the porch steps and opened it. The letter was 4 pages long. Aaron started by apologizing for how he'd handled the wedding cancellation. Then he spent 3 pages explaining how much he'd sacrificed to help me improve myself. He listed every time he'd pushed me to work out harder or eat better. He called it his investment in my transformation. He said I was ungrateful for throwing away everything he'd done for me. He compared our relationship to a business partnership where he'd provided resources and expertise. He said most women would be thankful for a partner who cared enough to help them reach their potential. The letter made me feel sick. He genuinely believed he'd been helping me instead of controlling me. He ended by saying he was willing to forgive my reaction if I apologized, and committed to finishing my transformation before we rescheduled the wedding. I read the letter twice, trying to understand how someone could be so disconnected from reality. The next morning, I showed the letter to Mom over breakfast. She read it with her jaw clenched and then said we needed to show it to her lawyer friend. She called and we met with the lawyer that afternoon. The lawyer read the letter and said it was evidence of Aaron's controlling mindset. She explained it could help if I needed a restraining order later. She also asked about the lease situation, and I explained I was still technically responsible for rent at the apartment I'd left. The lawyer said she could help me draft a formal letter to the landlord, explaining why I shouldn't be responsible after being forced out by a hostile living situation. We spent an hour writing the letter together. She included legal language about constructive eviction and hostile environment. She also attached a copy of Aaron's letter as evidence of his behavior. We sent it to the landlord that evening. The landlord responded faster than I expected. He emailed back the next day saying he'd received complaints from other tenants about Jake's behavior, and Aaron's clients coming and going at odd hours. He said several neighbors had mentioned noise issues and people blocking the parking lot. He offered to let me out of the lease without penalty if I provided a written statement about the hostile environment. I couldn't believe it was going to be this easy. The lawyer helped me write a detailed statement documenting Aaron's controlling behavior over the past year. I included the wedding cancellation circumstances and explained why I felt unsafe staying in the apartment. I described how Aaron monitored my food intake and exercise. I mentioned Jake's harassment and Aaron's invasion of my privacy. The lawyer reviewed it and we sent it to the landlord. He responded within 2 days, accepting my statement and releasing me from the lease. He said he was also reviewing Aaron's lease due to the multiple complaints. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't tied to Aaron financially anymore. With the lease issue resolved, I could finally start looking for my own place. Kylie came over that weekend and we spent Saturday viewing apartments. The third one we saw was perfect. A small 1-bedroom in a neighborhood I'd always loved. It had big windows and hardwood floors. The building had a small gym and the rent was reasonable. Kylie pulled out her phone and helped me calculate my budget. She showed me I could afford it comfortably with my salary. I'd been so focused on Aaron's financial control that I hadn't realized I made enough to live on my own. We went back to the leasing office and I filled out the application. The property manager said I had good credit and stable employment. She approved me on the spot. I put down the deposit that same day. I had my own apartment, my own space that Aaron had never been in, and couldn't contaminate with his opinions. On Monday morning, I got an email from an unexpected sender, Lewis, Aaron's business partner at the gym. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won. Lewis wrote that he wanted to apologize for not recognizing how Aaron was treating me. He said he'd heard about the wedding cancellation from mutual clients and felt terrible. He explained he was dissolving their gym partnership because he couldn't work with someone who treats people the way Aaron treated me. He said several clients had left after learning why the wedding was canceled. Apparently word had spread fast in their small fitness community. Lewis offered to write a statement supporting my version of events if Aaron tried to cause problems. He also mentioned that Aaron's reputation was suffering from his own behavior and choices. I read the email 3 times. Lewis had always seemed nice, but I'd assumed he agreed with Aaron's methods since they were business partners. Finding out he was standing up to Aaron felt validating. I wrote back thanking him for reaching out and for his support. I told him I appreciated his willingness to help if needed. His response made me realize Aaron's behavior was finally catching up with him in ways he couldn't control or manipulate. I wrote back thanking him for reaching out and telling him I appreciated his willingness to help if needed. His response made me realize Aaron's behavior was finally catching up with him in ways he couldn't control or manipulate. I walked into work Monday morning and sat down at my desk with actual energy for the first time in months. My computer screen didn't blur from exhaustion halfway through the day. I finished a project report by noon that would have taken me all week before. My boss stopped by my cubicle around 2 and asked if I had a minute to talk. We went into her office and she closed the door. She told me my recent work had been excellent and she wanted to discuss a senior analyst position opening up in 6 weeks. The role came with a significant raise and more responsibility. She said I left her office trying not to smile too big, because I already knew my answer. I'd been so focused on Aaron's workouts and meal plans that I'd barely noticed how much my job performance had suffered. Now that I could actually concentrate and wasn't running on 4 hours of sleep and 1,200 calories, my brain worked properly again. Ramona knocked on my cubicle wall Wednesday afternoon and asked if I wanted to grab coffee after work. We went to a place near the office and talked for 2 hours about everything except fitness. She told me about her family and her terrible dating experiences. I found myself laughing genuinely for the first time since the breakup. She invited me to meet some of her friends for drinks Friday night. I almost said no out of habit because Aaron used to say socializing was wasted time that could be spent training, but I caught myself and said yes. Friday came and I met Ramona and 4 other women at a wine bar downtown. They were funny and kind and nobody once mentioned calories or workout schedules. 1 woman worked in marketing, another taught high school, 2 were nurses. They asked about my life and actually listened to my answers. By the end of the night, they'd added me to their group chat and invited me to a movie next week. I realized Aaron had slowly cut me off from every friendship I'd had by scheduling workouts during social events or criticizing people who didn't meet his standards. I'd lost touch with college friends and work acquaintances without even noticing it happening. Kylie flew back into town the following weekend to help me move into my new apartment. We spent Saturday morning at furniture stores picking out pieces I actually liked. Aaron had insisted on gray and white everything because colors were distracting. I bought a teal couch and yellow throw pillows. Kylie found curtains with a floral pattern that made me happy just looking at them. We loaded everything into a rental truck and drove to my new place. The apartment felt like mine the moment we started unpacking. Kylie hung pictures while I assembled furniture. She put up the framed photo of us from college where I was laughing so hard my eyes were closed. Aaron had hidden that photo in a drawer because he said I looked too heavy in it. By evening, the apartment looked like a real home instead of a minimalist magazine spread. Kylie ordered pizza and we ate it sitting on my new couch without anyone commenting on carbs or portion sizes. She stayed until Sunday night helping me organize the kitchen and bathroom. When she left, I walked through each room touching things that were mine and only mine. The space reflected who I actually was instead of who someone else wanted me to be. I spent the next week settling into the apartment and my new routine. Tuesday evening, I unpacked the box containing my race medals and bibs. I'd kept them hidden at Aaron's place after he called them participation trophies for slow runners. Now I hung them on the wall above my desk where I could see them every day. Each medal represented hours of training and the accomplishment of finishing something difficult. I added photos from different points in my life to the wall. Me at 16 playing softball. Me at 20 graduating college. Me at my heaviest smiling at a family barbecue. Me crossing the finish line of my first half marathon. The wall became a timeline of my life at different sizes, all of them valid, all of them me. The apartment transformed into a celebration of who I'd always been, rather than a shrine to who someone else demanded I become. Thursday afternoon, I got a text from someone I barely knew asking if I'd be willing to talk to Aaron. Apparently, he'd been asking mutual acquaintances to reach out on his behalf. The message said Aaron wanted to apologize properly and discuss getting back together now that some time had passed. I stared at my phone for about 10 seconds before typing back a clear response. I told them I had zero interest in any communication with Aaron and considered the relationship permanently and completely over. I asked them not to pass along any more messages. Then I blocked the number. Within an hour, Aaron tried calling from 2 different numbers I didn't recognize. I blocked those too. His inability to accept my decision just confirmed I'd made the right choice leaving him. I printed out the job posting for the senior analyst position and spent my evenings preparing for the interview. I reviewed all my recent projects and made notes about my contributions and results. For the first time, I looked at my work accomplishments without Aaron's voice in my head, saying my career didn't matter as much as my appearance. I had skills that had nothing to do with how I looked or what size clothes I wore. I'd increased department efficiency by 15% with a new tracking system I designed. I'd trained 3 new employees who were now performing well. I'd caught a major error in a client report that would have cost the company money. My boss scheduled my interview for the following Tuesday. She told me I was a strong candidate and she'd been impressed by my work quality over the past month. I prepared answers to common interview questions and practiced them until I felt confident. The interview went well, and I left feeling like I'd represented myself honestly and competently. Ramona mentioned the running group was doing a 10K race in 6 weeks and asked if I wanted to join them. She emphasized it was just for fun, and there was no pressure about finishing time. The group was running it together as a social event. I registered that night and started training with them twice a week. Running with the group felt completely different from my training with Aaron. We talked and joked during runs instead of obsessing over pace. Someone would stop to tie their shoe and we'd all wait. If someone had a bad day, we'd slow down to match their comfortable speed. The focus was on enjoying the activity and each other's company, rather than treating every run like a test we might fail. I found myself looking forward to group runs the way I used to before Aaron made exercise feel like punishment. Freya called me Friday evening to check in and see how I was adjusting to the new apartment. We talked for over an hour about work and the running group and my growing social circle. She said I sounded more confident and relaxed than I had in the months before the breakup. Her comment made me realize I'd been living in constant low-level anxiety about Aaron's judgment for so long that I'd forgotten what normal felt like. Every food choice, every workout, every outfit had been filtered through worry about his criticism. Even when he wasn't around, I'd heard his voice in my head commenting on my choices. Now that voice was finally getting quieter. I could eat lunch without calculating if it fit his approved meal plan. I could skip a workout without guilt. I could wear clothes I liked without worrying if they showed too much of my body. The relief of not being constantly judged was almost physical. My boss called me into her office Wednesday morning and closed the door with a smile on her face. She offered me the senior analyst position with a raise that was 20% more than my current salary. She specifically mentioned my leadership potential and collaborative approach to projects. She said the team respected me, and she was excited to see what I'd accomplish in the new role. I accepted immediately and thanked her for the opportunity. Walking back to my desk, I felt genuine pride in my accomplishment that had nothing to do with my appearance or Aaron's approval. I'd earned this promotion through my actual skills and work ethic. That evening, I celebrated by going to dinner with Ramona and her friends. They toasted my success and asked about my new responsibilities. Nobody diminished my achievement or suggested it wasn't as important as other goals. For the first time in years, I felt like my professional accomplishments mattered as much as anything else in my life. Race day arrived with clear skies and cool morning air. I woke up at 5:30 and ate the breakfast I'd prepared the night before without worrying if the carbs fit someone else's plan. The running group met at the starting line an hour before the race began. Ramona bounced on her toes to warm up while the older woman who was training for her first 5K stretched against a fence. We took a group photo where everyone smiled genuinely, instead of sucking in their stomachs or angling for the best light. When the starting gun fired, we stayed together as a pack. Nobody surged ahead to prove anything. The woman training for her 5K set our pace and we matched it without complaint. Around mile 2, someone needed to walk for a bit and we all slowed down until she felt ready to jog again. People cheered from the sidewalks and we waved back like kids. At mile 4, my legs burned, but in a good way that reminded me my body was strong and capable. We crossed the finish line holding hands and raising our arms together. Our time didn't matter. The photographer captured us laughing and hugging, while other runners who'd finished much faster looked confused by our celebration. After the race, we went for pancakes, and nobody mentioned calories once. 2 weeks later, I downloaded a dating app without telling anyone. My profile mentioned running and my job, but nothing about weight loss or fitness goals. The first few matches were awkward small talk that went nowhere. Then I matched with someone named Timmy who asked about my half marathon time. When I told him 2 hours, he said that was impressive for someone who started running recently. We met for coffee on a Saturday afternoon. He showed up wearing normal clothes instead of gym gear designed to show off his body. We talked about work and books and terrible movies we secretly loved. When I mentioned training with Victor, he asked what my fitness goals were with actual curiosity instead of judgment. He said he used to run, but his knees couldn't handle it anymore, so now he hiked instead. We talked for 3 hours without once discussing meal plans or body types. Walking to my car afterward, I realized I'd enjoyed myself without performing or trying to be smaller. Timmy texted that evening asking if I wanted to go hiking next weekend. I said yes. Amy came over to my apartment on a Wednesday evening with takeout from my favorite Thai place. We sat on my couch eating pad Thai straight from the containers. She looked around at my decorating choices and the race medals on my wall. She told me I seemed different lately. Happier. More like myself. I asked what she meant. She said during my relationship with Aaron, I'd been constantly tense like I was waiting for criticism. She'd watched me shrink in more ways than just physical. The way I laughed less. How I stopped offering opinions about things. The way I always checked my phone to see if Aaron had texted something mean. She said seeing me now reminded her of who I was before Aaron entered my life. Someone confident and funny who didn't apologize for taking up space. Her words made me realize how much energy I'd spent trying to accommodate his demands. Every conversation had been filtered through worry about his reaction. Every food choice second-guessed. Every outfit evaluated for how it might displease him. I'd stopped being myself and become someone performing the role of acceptable girlfriend. Amy hugged me and said she was proud of how far I'd come in just 4 months. I cried a little, but they were good tears. I ran into Jake at the grocery store on a Sunday morning. He was in the produce section looking uncomfortable. When he saw me, he froze like he'd been caught doing something wrong. He walked over slowly and said he wanted to apologize. He said he didn't realize how bad things were between me and Aaron. He claimed he thought it was just normal couple stuff about wedding planning stress. He said he'd since moved out of Aaron's apartment because the situation got weird after I left. I asked what he meant by weird. He said Aaron became obsessed with tracking down my social media activity and complaining constantly about how I'd ruined his reputation. Jake said he finally got a job at a warehouse and realized living on Aaron's couch while enabling his behavior wasn't healthy. His apology sounded genuine, but I didn't owe him forgiveness. I told him I appreciated him saying something, but I wasn't interested in maintaining any connection to that part of my life. He nodded and said he understood. We went our separate ways down different aisles. Victor called me into his office after our training session on Thursday. He pulled up my workout logs and running times on his computer. He said I'd gained significant strength over the past 2 months and my running form had improved dramatically. He mentioned the half marathon I'd completed before we started working together and said my current pace would probably put me 30 minutes faster. Then he asked if I'd ever considered training for a full marathon. His tone was casual, like he was suggesting a fun possibility instead of issuing a requirement. He said he thought I had the dedication and physical capability if I was interested. Something about the way he framed it as my choice made me actually want to try. With Aaron, everything had been about meeting his standards. With Victor, it was about exploring what I could accomplish for myself. I told him I'd think about it. By the time I got home, I'd already looked up marathons happening in 6 months. I registered for a marathon scheduled for early spring. The registration fee felt like an investment in myself instead of money spent trying to please someone else. Victor designed a training plan that gradually built my mileage without risking injury. The schedule looked challenging but achievable. For the first time in years, I felt excited about a fitness goal instead of anxious. Running became something I did because I wanted to, rather than because someone demanded it. My body wasn't a project requiring fixing. It was strong and capable of amazing things. The training runs were hard, but satisfying. Every mile I completed was proof that I could set a goal and work toward it on my own terms. No one was tracking my pace or criticizing my form. No one was comparing me to other runners or suggesting I wasn't dedicated enough. I ran because it made me feel powerful and free. I mentioned the marathon to Ramona during our coffee meetup on Saturday. Her eyes lit up and she said she'd been thinking about training for one too. By the end of our conversation, she'd pulled up the registration page on her phone. 3 other women from the running group committed to training with us when we mentioned it at our next group run. We planned our long runs together for Sunday mornings. Having a supportive community made the challenging training feel less scary. We created a group chat where we shared our weekly mileage and encouraged each other through tough runs. Nobody shamed anyone for having a bad training day or needing to walk. We celebrated small victories like completing our first 15-mile run or finally breaking through a speed barrier. The marathon became something we were building toward together instead of something I had to prove alone. My friend Sarah, who worked as a photographer, offered to take professional photos of me. She said she was building her portfolio and wanted to practice shooting active lifestyle content. We met at a park on a sunny afternoon. She told me to wear whatever made me feel good. I chose my favorite running outfit and the jacket I'd bought myself after getting the promotion. Sarah directed me through different poses, but nothing felt forced or fake. She captured me mid-laugh and stretching before a run and looking confident in clothes I actually liked. When she sent me the edited photos a week later, I stared at them for a long time. The woman in those pictures looked beautiful and strong. Her body showed evidence of hard work and dedication. Her smile was genuine instead of practiced. I looked at those photos and thought I looked good. Not good for my size or good considering where I started. Just good. Aaron's voice criticizing my round face and soft arms was finally silent in my mind. 6 months after the breakup, I took stock of my life. My new job was going well and my boss had mentioned another advancement opportunity. I was training for a marathon with friends who supported me unconditionally. My apartment felt like home with decorations I chose and space that was entirely mine. I'd started seeing Freya officially for therapy sessions every other week. We worked through the damage from my relationship with Aaron and talked about building a life based on my own values instead of someone else's expectations. I had friends who liked me for who I was. I had hobbies that brought me joy. I had goals that excited me instead of scared me. My body was healthy and strong. I ate food that nourished me without guilt. I moved in ways that felt good. Some days were harder than others, but overall I felt happy in ways I couldn't remember feeling during my relationship. The night before the marathon, I lay in bed thinking about everything that had changed. Aaron calling off the wedding had felt like the worst thing that could happen. Standing in our living room while he compared me to a fixer-upper house had shattered something inside me, but that moment had also freed me. It forced me to see the relationship clearly instead of making excuses for his cruelty. It pushed me to choose myself over his impossible standards. If he'd gone through with the wedding, I might have spent years trying to shrink myself to fit his vision. Instead, I'd built a life where I didn't need to shrink at all. I was genuinely happy and healthy and free from his control. I had a career I was proud of and friends who valued me and goals that mattered to me. My future felt full of possibilities instead of restrictions. I was excited about tomorrow's marathon and next month's work project and all the things I hadn't planned yet. Aaron had wanted a bride who fit his brand. I'd become a person who fit my own life perfectly.